Welcome back to Story Deep Dive with Dana and Rachel. This is a podcast with book coaches and editors that are besties. And we discuss books not as readers, but as writers to draw inspiration from great reads and lots of laughs. And this month, we are kicking off our overview in this episode of Sin and Magic by K.F. Breene. If you have been around, first of all, y'all, Rachel over here pumping her fist like we are at a concert or something.
I'm silently, so that I don't interrupt, I'm silently like hyping, like, yeah, we're doing, hell yeah, let's go. Yeah, what up? Like, I'm being like silent, like mime hype man over here. I'm just trying to do my part.
I will
okay.
Take it. So, we are talking about book 2 in the Demigods of San Francisco. If you've been around, then welcome back. We talked about Sin and Chocolate, which was book 1 last year. You can look in our episodes from season 1. And today we are starting off our talk on book 2. But before we get into our overview, Rachel, what do you have going on over there as Story Cipher other than the silent pump up squad?
Yes, ma'am.
No,
well,
ma'am.
You know, I am one man hype squad always. This is the role that I play everywhere I go, and I can't help myself.
That will not be your dance. We will let that go. Just don't cut it out.
Dana's like, no to the Vogue. You may
no to the Vogue.
Not. Canceled.
Please. Find another one.
I would like to say though, briefly, when you were doing the intro, there was like a pause before you said "and besties," and I was like, oh, is she cutting out the besties part? I was like, have I been like, is Dana like, I'm so done with you, I'm cutting out the besties part? Like, I was just like, is she gonna forget to say that we're also besties?
You've been working so hard. Like, I haven't even we haven't talked. You've been under the manuscript gun. I can't say nothing either because I've been woo.
Man, we are just trying. Listen, that's how, like, this, one of the ways that Dana and I are able to gauge how busy we are is, like, the amount of contact that we manage between ourselves. So, like, sometimes, like, throughout life, right, like, we both have, like, our busy seasons, and, like, one of us will sort of be, like, a little bit slower to respond, or, like, it'll be, like, just a little bit, like, hit or miss. But when we both get busy, it is like, hey, are you still out there somewhere? Are you in Houston somewhere in the world? Like, are you, hello? So
that is so true.
Like,
and
she's
it's
officially
rare
knocked
that
out
both
the
of
besties.
No,
but then she said it and it was okay. So that if everybody, she said bestie, so we're still besties and it's fine.
Listen, you know I don't have it memorized, child. You know I gotta look for it, okay? Listen. But yes, it has been busy, but I mean, that's a good problem to have. It's interesting because it's like, it almost felt like the beginning of the year was super smooth, and then all of a sudden it was like,
okay, maybe the beginning of your year was super smooth.
Yeah, yours was.
Meanwhile,
okay.
I contracted the plague.
You did.
The thing that's so frustrating about that, we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks, in our small talk, but like, I had like a low grade nonstop cold for the entire holiday. So this whole 2 weeks, I was like under the weather and just like not feeling well, but not like full blown sick. And then the first 2 weeks of January, like I caught the actual flu. And so I just spent like a month and plus some like extra change days just sick. Just not a great way to end your year or
start your year. No.
So, first of all, I think that you guys should know, for anybody who's listening, anybody who's listening and not watching, it's officially like we've officially hit mug changeover season. So I have seasonal mugs. You guys know this. I had Christmas mug, and then I had like a snowflake mug, and now it's time for spring mug, which is this lovely thing right here. So it's spring mug season, which is very exciting. But then for like actual relevant things happening at Story Cipher, so this week when this episode comes out, I will be doing one of their talks for their for pro writing aid. What do they call them? Their pro
expert series.
Expert series, thank you. I was like, what is it? Where they do, for their paid community, they do a live workshop with someone like me. So I'm going to be talking about some of the strategies that I use for scene planning, or in particular, if I'm struggling with a scene, like if I can't
Mm.
find, in particular, conflict, if I'm trying to work out, like, okay, what, like, not just the external conflict, but like what is happening between the characters in this scene. Because sometimes you can kind of have like the external stuff going on, but it's not always like, you don't always have like the charge that you want to the dialogue that's like telling us about what's happening between the characters in the midst of the external conflict. And so I'm going to be talking through some of the strategies that I use to help me like just think through those things more intentionally, kind of chart it out, think out loud before I go into the scene, so that I've got that in my back pocket, so that when I'm writing the dialogue, it's like, ah, yes, like I know kind of what's going on beneath the surface, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
bringing that to the surface in my mind, so that way it can go under the surface of the dialogue, what's going on, to really animate that with more conflict, and bring out those character dynamics um, a little more meaningfully, a little more strongly. So that's what my session is going to be about. And we just recently did a scene study on one of Darlington's chapters in Ninth House in the Academy, which was super fun, because we got to really look at designing a scene where the stakes are largely emotional, and where it's really so much more about connection, but establishing stakes in a way that they still feel meaningful, and it still feels like the protagonist is like making meaningful active decisions, even though it's more about connection and more about like the emotional side of things, and how you actually bring that like and turn that into something kind of like physicalized. So it's just, I've got like scene writing on the brain, because we've got the expert series, and we just did a scene study for Ninth House. So we're just eyeball deep in scenes right now. So
It's
that's what we're
but
doing.
And that's a great companion to the talk that you did in, was it December? With
Which
the pro writing? Didn't you
which
do how
one?
to plan for a scene? The other expert series talk that you did?
I did planning your second draft,
Oh,
but
okay.
this one will go kind of nicely with my like building out your secondary cast, which is like the first one I ever did for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because those details are like, those are the details you bring to bear in the scene to actually like animate that dialogue, and to give it
Gotcha.
that, that sort of internal, it's like it's they're motivated again from the inside, and that's informing their dialogue and their behaviors. um
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so I'm excited to do that. I've never done this style of workshop for them before, so it's always a little like, I always feel like nervous when I'm doing something that like I how are they going to do it? Am I going to see all the faces, or is everybody going to have their camera off and I'm just staring into the like dead eye like of the camera? Like, I don't know. So it's always something new.
Yeah, no, you'll see people, but it's still set up. You're spotlighted because I did the one, and I
Okay.
have another one coming up. I can't
Yeah.
remember when it is. It's coming up.
Oh, you're doing
But
another
yeah,
one?
she asked me to.
Hey, heck yeah, get in there. The people, honestly, the people love you. Like, everybody wants more. If they can have more
Hmm.
of you, they want like, I'm like, man, if I could have more Dana in my life, I would. We're trying. It's just really hard right now to like find
So
the.
it's only so much to go around, okay?
That's right.
It's only so much to go around. But I do like doing them. I think it's interesting, especially if you do something as a presenter that is either a little bit different or a talk that you want to test. I like that
Yeah, yeah.
because it's normally a good and interactive audience that you get to get a good feel of whether it lands the way you want to. And
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
what I've enjoyed from them. Hmm.
I love that. I just, as a person, I love that you're like, oh, I'm going to test this out and see how it lands. Like, I'm taking a mode of experimentation versus this must be perfect. God, I hope it's perfect. It had better work. Because
Well,
remember what I said about overthinking perfectionist? God help us. Like, it is like, I have planned that thing within an inch of its life to like make it as like perfect as I can. Oh,
girl,
it's
it's
awful.
only 45 minutes.
I
What
know.
else?
It's too much pressure for 45 minutes. No human should exist under the amount of pressure that I put on myself
Girl,
on
you
any
know
given
me. I
day.
will think about it and put some bullet points on the thing.
I know.
and they won't know the difference.
That's why I'm trying to be more like you. It's just a really, really slow process. Uh,
Oh
so,
my gosh.
speaking
You're
of which,
funny.
what's new over there at Danger Tale? So your expert series workshop isn't coming up until a little bit later. But what you
Mhm.
got going on at the moment? Because it's there. You got stuff going on. Are you going to talk about the like nonfiction book? Or are you going to talk about like
Oh,
what are you gonna
listen.
tell the world about?
Y'all, Rachel, wait till my brain is tired to be trying to get all the juicy stuff out on the recording line. Well, right now, well, by the time that y'all watch this, my hope is that I have the draft. But I'm in the process of writing. I'm calling it the first final draft, like the first full draft of the nonfiction.
Mm.
And I set myself up because I feel like I've taught this so much. I've done workshops, I've done a course. I was like, okay, I have all the transcripts. I'm not starting from scratch. That just felt like, okay, you're starting with stuff. And then I sit down and I look at my outline and I'm like, this isn't working. And I'm like, oh, exactly.
Oh
Air leaves
no.
lungs. And so
Oh.
I know. And I've been working, and then because I'm like sharing it on the socials, I feel like somebody's grandma. I realized that again, like I told y'all, I'll tell y'all in another one. Can I just hide in a corner with a book is how I feel, because it's interesting. I feel totally 100% comfortable with writing fiction and writing a romance novel. This, not so much. If you ask me to build a program and from scratch, like
You've done
exactly
that
with
half
my
a
eyes
dozen
closed
times at
a
least.
million times. And I don't, and so I had to sort of like do some trickery for my brain
Yeah.
and just get it done. Like it's just a draft. And so as I'm doing it and I'm going through, there were some big decisions that sort of made it feel like it flowed a little bit better. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the biggest hiccup was realizing, like, in my brain, there are a million craft books. We
Yeah.
do not need another craft book. It's the way my brain is like, why do we need another craft book? And then like realizing that this, to me, it's about plotting, right? And there's not a lot of books about plotting. Even if it was, I mean, I think my perspective is different in that regard. So there was that. And then also it's sort of like a sort of nod without being like, it's not a memoir. I don't give a whole lot of like my story. It's really more so of like how the blueprint came to be, like how it unfolds and all of that, but really about the person that's sort of deciding that I'm taking my craft seriously.
Yeah.
And me taking it seriously is starting to understand like what's the underbelly, like what's the undercurrent, and what's going to help me to have a stronger foundation to start writing from. And so I just have to give myself plenty of wiggle room,
Yeah.
and hopefully that it is not monstrous or too short. That I don't just be like, okay, done with that. Next one. So who knows what's happening. But yeah, I mean, the great thing is that like the community and clients are cheering me on because they've been begging for the book. So that's a good thing, but it also feels like pressure. So,
Yeah.
but I just am just allowing myself to enjoy the process of codifying my thoughts,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
have
I
it in
think
course form, right? Go ahead.
right. No, I was going to say, I think that's something that nonfiction is like, whether you're writing articles or writing, like, that's one of the things that I do find really helpful about like writing nonfiction. It's funny that you're like, man, I could write fiction all day long, but this feels like, ugh. And like my experience is like the opposite of like, man, if you want me to write a craft book, I'll write you a craft book. Like, it's just, I like nonfiction feels like the easy road in, and it's the fiction that I'm like, oh, this is too hard and too scary and I don't know what to do. Like, so I think it's really funny the way that those are
We're
like,
flipped.
we're very much like inverted characteristics just as people, right? Like we're
That's so
strong
true.
opposites.
So true.
Which is just, I think it makes our dynamic extra delightful because contrast is what makes friendships fun.
Listen, it turns into what kind of Mickey Mouse operation do y'all got going on over there? If
Correct.
people could be a fly on the wall, but I mean, I think part of it too is having a long time with it, and I think that has helped me to feel like, well, to be able to teach it this much and to still be able to teach it after
Yeah.
all of these years, and I'm really excited about having it in one place.
Yeah, where it really is just sort of like all brought together. And again, like you said, and again, then that's the thing about nonfiction is like, and this is again why writing articles is can be so helpful because you are codifying a train of thought, and then that goes kind of like triple when you're doing a nonfiction book, and you sort of can bring it all together, and you're kind of like you're able to make all of those connections kind of explicit and contained within like an artifact that you can give someone to guide them. And
Hmm.
that's that it happens in a unique way when you write it as a cohesive whole, because it is a cohesive whole as a course, and then when you sort of translate it into a written artifact, it becomes like it allows that thought to sort of like solidify in a new way.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And, we'll see. Again, my goal is having the draft by the end of this month. And at the time of this recording, I'll have some extra writing time like this week just to dedicate to it because the boot camp
Mhm.
sort of just threw everything for a loop.
Yes.
So, um, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I don't know what to expect other than I will get it done. And the
Yeah.
fact that I have committed, whereas in the past I didn't even want to do that. So,
I was gonna say this is actually like a huge deal because you've been wanting to do this for a
yeah.
while.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Maybe not since we've known each other, but
Yeah.
since early in our friendship, you have talked about wanting to write this nonfiction book, and now it is actually happening. Like the book is actually being drafted presently, and
Hmm.
that's a big moment, right? Like it's really happening. And I know, of course, like when you're writing like a first draft, it doesn't feel like wow, it's really happening. You're just like, oh no,
It
but it
just,
is a huge milestone on that goal that you have had for quite a while.
yeah. Yeah. Right now, I'm just like, yeah, it's, it feels like that. I think, I don't know. It's one of those things where you can, I don't know. I would say yes, you're correct. It is moving forward. It's also something like to keep it a buck is like foundational to everything else that I do. So that
Mhm.
kind of it has a pressure, but the flip side of it is like having that sort of locked in also locks it in. Like
Yeah.
for example, I didn't realize until I started writing this how much I value the plot adhesion. Like
Mm.
it's a huge point into how I see the way romance progresses.
Yeah.
And then also like another section writing my difference between romance and love stories.
Yes. Oh, which is like that's something that you've been for lack of a better word like preaching for like a
Right.
long time. And so for it to be like again codified in a book, yes. Oh, you're going to help the people, Dana. The people need it. They don't know they need it necessarily, but you are going to help the people.
That and I can't wait to write about the breakup scene. Oh my goodness! And I won't call it the breakup scene, but I feel like every romance has got to have a breakup scene. But it's
Yeah.
just so what I have to do, what I get to do is just let the experience be what it is and to allow myself to enjoy it and just sort of go through the process. So I've been doing a lot like y'all my writing process is so varied. And so doing dictation and walk and talks and just listing out a bunch of questions for myself because I realize there's a lot of things that I just know and it's in there. So just like listing out questions and just talking through those questions to sort of
Yeah.
smooth over those thoughts. And so that's been very helpful. And I listen, I feel like those people when they say that they look forward to having written,
Having done the thing.
yes.
Yes.
That's what I
You
want.
know, And there are those things in our lives too where we're like, you know what, the thing I'm most excited about is having done it, being finished with it.
I, I'm like, I have the other stuff. Like, that was the other part of the which we'll talk about in a future episode, but the boot camp experience, that how much people loved the resources, but a lot of that was because of working on the book. Finalizing the
Yeah.
resources really was helpful to sort of lay out the differences and where the acts break and why is different. And so yeah, who knew? Who knew I would start this year off like this? I did not.
I'm
I did
not gonna
not.
lie, 2026 is, we're not that far into it, and it's shaping up to be a big year.
Girl, it's like, for real. This is what we doing? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes.
Never a dull moment.
Never. What would we do? No, I will find stuff to do at a dull moment, girl. I don't
Oh,
need help. I
that
will be painting and quilting. Listen,
you have more than enough stuff to keep yourself occupied.
girl, listen. I'll be slanging books. You know how I do.
It's the Dana classic.
Okay. So, with that said, I think we're ready to rock and roll and jump into this overview of Sin and Magic by K.F. Breene. And before we get into it, Rachel, will you please go ahead and give us the summary?
Yes, ma'am. All right. Sin and Magic is book 2 in K.F. Breene's Demigods of San Francisco series, where broke, hidden necromancer Alexis has just made the worst, best decision of her life. She's agreed to work for Kieran, a dangerously powerful demigod, to find and free his mother's trapped spirit before his vengeful father discovers their plan and kills them all. With the help of wildcard necromancer Bria, a fiercely loyal inner circle, and the 2 teens she's sworn to protect, Alexis is learning to wield terrifying new magic while navigating a San Francisco ruled by gods, demigods, and ghosts who all want something from her. It's a slow burn paranormal romance threaded through with found family, secret missions, and an off page villain whose shadow shapes every choice the characters make.
So, as we jump into this discussion, what are some of the things that you'd love to sort of kick off our discussion of Sin and Magic?
Yeah, so for me, and this is the thing that has probably like been my focus throughout the entire book, is like I really have been fascinated by how it functions in as a part of a series. Now I do want to just sort of say it's like worth noting this book actually, like, you could read it and not have read the first book and be like, within the first chapter she catches you up on everything you need to know, and you could just, so if you missed Sin and Chocolate, if you picked up this book and read it, you could just dive in from right where you are. She catches you up, and she catches you up fast, and like she's not coy about it. She's like, here's what this thing is, here's what this thing is. All right, moving on. Like, she just gets right in there. So if you haven't read the first one, you could start here with the second one. But one of the things, this is like partially my point, and also like kind of a question that I want to pose to you about the fact that, so this is a romance following a single couple across 6 books, which is very unusual. So I just kind of want to talk to you about like, what do you normally see in romance, right? Like, what are some of the usual options that people have, and what are some of the like some of the risks, not risks, that's the wrong word, some of the considerations that sort of have to go into even attempting something like this, right? Like, what things is she kind of having to keep in mind in order to pull this off over the course of 6 books? But for my part, I also am just going to talk a little bit about when you're thinking about like a running series versus a serial style. Because normally, if you have a series that has 6 books in it, it's more of a serial style. Each one is a standalone. And so I just want to take the opportunity to sort of compare and contrast those options and what some of the sort of relative risks and rewards you might say for choosing one over the other. And so that for me, like, I really want to sort of like, to set up this conversation, this is my opportunity to kind of pick your brain to talk about what is unusual about this book and what people might want to know, since we're talking about it on the podcast, and also like I don't super recommend doing a 6-book series following the same couple. But what she's doing and what she has to do in order to pull that off. So I'll be talking mostly about this as a book too, and asking you a whole bunch of questions because it is, again, romance specifically and following the same couple, which means we are like stretching that burn out for like a minute. So that's sort of where my zone is going to be. What do you have on your list that you want to talk about to prep
First,
everybody for the upcoming conversation?
I'm like, first of all, your list is super long. Okay. I think
It's
you kind of
one
actually,
thing.
no, I broke your list down to 5 or 6 things. That was a
Okay, I
long
have
thing.
one bullet point that has like, here's a couple things to think about underneath that bullet point.
Okay. Longer list. Go ahead. So,
All right,
okay.
just go ahead.
I think it's going to actually fold around some of the things that you brought up, and you already know, like, kind of throw the questions out. And instead of like going down each one of them, since I'm sort of like moderating the discussion, we'll just fold yours in. I think the thing that you sort of kicked us off with, and it sort of will fold into mine, is remembering that this is a romance. It is a romance series, but it's not like your typical series. Many romance series may have several books, and you have different things that connect them. You may have your overarching plot, but typically you'll see that there's a different romantic couple per book,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not usually one couple, the same couple across the book, for many reasons, but primarily because the reader expectation for a romance is a happily ever after, and a couple that has been stretched out over several books have not had their happily ever after because the story is still continuing, right? So it's not common. And when you do typically find something like this, especially if you're talking about in the case of this being a paranormal romance, I would say paranormal romance now would be adjacent to what some people may think about when you think of a romantasy or romantic fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
even though at the end of the day, it is still a romance, right?
Yeah, romance
And
folklore.
it's the fact that that sometimes what you will find is that if you do have a situation where it is the same couple, you usually will find them in a trilogy. Now,
Mm-hmm.
with trilogies, it's very common when you think about fantasy, again, noun
Yeah.
romantasy, that's sort of borrowed from fantasy. But it's not as common in romance
Mm-hmm.
because of that happily ever factor and the fact that you're taking this couple that we are here to see them get together and walk off into the sunset, and you're stretching it across 3 books. So let's
Yeah.
just say figuratively, if this was a 100,000 word book, you're stretching that romance out to 300,000 words. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, what are we going to be doing to hold them for 3,000 words for this
Yeah.
one couple, right? So to enter into the Demigods of San Francisco, and you have one couple, 6 books,
Mm-hmm.
pretty nice size length books.
Mm-hmm.
It is very uncommon. I don't know of another. The best that, I mean, I'm sure if you gave me some time, I could find another one. The best that I could think of was that there are some series that will probably blend between the PNR and the romantasy, in that it is maybe 2 books, 2 trilogies in one series.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, when you say a series, is that there is some connecting factor. That connecting factor could be the overarching, an overarching plot. The
Mm-hmm.
connecting factor could be a relationship, a location, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when you find those, it may even be tropes sometimes in romance, and sometimes those were really more isolated standalones, and they're just connected by the same family,
Yeah.
siblings,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
get married, and you see them, as an example, having their, or let's think about our last book, which was Before I Let Go. The series is
Yes.
connected by same community area and best friends, and
Yep.
they each are female protagonists, but it's their own stories,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like the continuation of time, right? But
Yeah. Rather than a plot line.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And they each get their happily ever after sort of packaged off, and it sort of hands off
Right.
to the next woman. So when you get here, and if you are new, again, welcome. If not, you remember we talked about book one, and
Mm-hmm.
in book one ended with Alexis accepting the job to work for Kyrian to find his mother's, basically get his mother's spirit.
Mm-hmm.
um that's the best way to say it, like find it, and it's been potentially hidden by his father. Okay, so it picks, but at the end of that book, it's important to point out that they are kind of like in a happy for now, but they are
Mm-hmm.
not technically a couple,
Yeah.
right? They're not technically a romantic, like all the way in. They've been
Mm-hmm.
intimate, but they are not like, we go together, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know if people say that anymore, but they don't say that. So it's a continuation of that romantic relationship while at the same time increasing the stakes and moving into the next book in the series, and what we will talk about over the next couple of episodes, expanding the world, understanding more about her magic,
Mm-hmm.
his plight with his father and his mother, and how they are working together under this agreement, contractual agreement, that she's working for him, and still working through their attraction for each other and
Yeah.
their chemistry with each other. And so, with that said, that kind of goes to a little bit of your functioning as a series sort of
Mm-hmm.
note. And I'm sure you'll add some more to that. But I would say the first thing that I would sort of added to this discussion in the overview of sort of thinking about is like, knowing like what drives the plot,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think one of the things that we've had in coming episodes, and that we had in our before our previous discussions, and when we kind of talk about what we want to talk about,
Mm, for
is
sure.
deciding like what is driving this story. And at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, a paranormal romance is a romance.
Yeah.
And so, even though we have this big thing that's hanging out there in the distance with Valens, it is still a romance. So, at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it's about whether or not they're going to be able to work out their differences and see the connection that they have for what it really is, and how it's not like anything else that they've encountered, right? But for both of them, especially when we meet them at the beginning of book two, it's like, oh no, he's a demigod, and
Mm-hmm.
we are not on the same world. And for
Yeah.
him, I'm about to go into the biggest challenge of my life, and I don't know if I'm going to make it out alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to pull somebody into this knowing that I don't know what's about to happen. So both
Yeah.
of them are repelling the romantic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but the circumstances and the contract have adhered them to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to understand what drives your plot so that you can be able to know, like, what does this book do for that series?
Yeah.
This is a unique circumstance because this is book two of six,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to serve a place. Like, if we can remove that book and still be able to just plow through, that's something not working there,
Mm-hmm.
especially um, with this being the same romantic couple all the way through.
Yeah.
And I will pause there because I sort of did my one and two, just so that you can talk about, what you wanted to add there.
Yeah, well, I just want to take a second just to sort of like, you started on the point, and I might be sort of like getting out ahead of it by highlighting it. But I think you're getting at something really important that that I find that people miss a lot, right? If this is an anything romance, the reader you are attracting is the romance reader. And so that means that the primary promises of the story, the primary, even if it has an external sort of like driving like plot force, the primary promise, the primary through line is we are here for the couple and to see them overcome whatever challenges in order to be together. And that's really important because if you, because of the way that you market the book, and knowing that you are getting the, like, if you put the word romance in it, Like if it is a romance of some kind, knowing that you are then attracting romance readers who are showing up for romance plus whatever other thing, right? Historical, mystery, right? Mystery romance is still romance first, mystery second. Paranormal, like whatever that thing is, but romance is really what people are showing up for. And then the other thing is sort of like um oh man, I don't want to say like it's like the flavor of romance, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
that
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think what I'm thinking about is like the romance is the central thing, and then there's like a secondary thing that's like your vehicle or your container, but the romance is the thing, right? It's the thing at the center that is the promise that people are looking, they're still looking for. If you make a promise about there's a mystery, the people are still going to be expecting at the end we find out who did it or we find out the truth or whatever, but like the primary driver being the romance. And I think the reason that's important is because you are by labeling romance and by saying you're writing a romance, you need to know who your story is catering to and what the audience is looking for, if that makes sense.
Mm. It does, but I will say right now, a lot of that is murky because I don't think people always label it as a romance, but because a romance is prominent in the story, outsiders will market it as a romance and it's not really a romance, right? And
Oh, for
so
sure.
I think sometimes you can even see that in because I think a romantasy is different than a fantasy romance. The
Yeah.
way that I would say the fantasy was first, and a lot of times that means the romance is a secondary plot. But
Yes.
I think here's the deal: tomato, tomato, right? Because at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, people could call it whatever they want to. The risk that you run though is the fact that you attract the wrong audience and
Mm-hmm.
then the expectations are not met
Yeah.
because you didn't realize that there were expectations there.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that normally gets people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not going to talk about books that you see it. So, and that kind of goes to my book too. Is like, you know, we've had this discussion before, like offline, where it's like, as a fantasy reader, you see one thing. As a romance reader, I see something else. And
Mm-hmm.
paranormal romance is romance,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, what I would say is that. Even if, like what you said, there is a strong external arc, and it should be. Why? Because
Mm-hmm.
most people are not here just to see them fall in love. Something's got
Yeah.
to be happening
We need
to move
something
the
else
story
happening
forward.
along the way.
Exactly.
Yes.
You need an external plot to move the story forward. And here, the lurking threat of Valens, but the specific external plot here is with
Mm-hmm.
finding his mom's spirit is what's helping us to pace, and is what is adhering them together so that they are trying to work together while pretend they're not falling for each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is a forcing function.
Right.
The proximity causes sort of like them to steep in this
Mm-hmm.
situation, right?
Yeah.
So and so it's necessary, but at all times you are still signaling to the romance reader, this is what you can expect.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a book like this or a series like this, where at the end, technically each one of those books are a happy for now and not a
Mm-hmm.
happily ever after. And she
Yeah.
does a great job of that, which we really don't talk about that part, but she does a great job of that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing. And so understanding, and this is kind of was my little caveat or little piggyback or squirrel moment of my second point, which is, what is your brand promise and what is your reader promise for that
Mm-hmm.
story? And is it that they are going to get this romance, or are you in this case selling them? You didn't say it was a heist, but let's say somebody says like a heist or or something else. I don't know what else.
Yeah.
It could be action.
Yeah.
It could be an action adventure.
Mm-hmm.
It could even be, if you wanted to say, women's fiction. If you wanted
Mm-hmm.
to, with Lexi in adjusting to being a new parent and in a new situation, etc. And so, understanding that, and what it does is on the romance side, it sets up the flow that is common to and the infrastructure of romance. And for the reader, it sets up a set of expectations that have been here since been here. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you can fight against it if you want, but if you decide to fight against it, just don't call it a romance. Call it a love story. College, they like to dibble dabble a little bit. Call it something, but just don't call it a romance. And I think knowing that helps you to set up those opening chapters and to also set up this your series in a way that you don't set yourself up for I'm air quote failure because you are marketing one thing and you're delivering another and it
Yeah.
turns out bad, not because the story doesn't work, but because it doesn't align with what was marketed or what
Yeah,
was.
with the expectation that was
Mhm.
given. And we talk about this literally, I think every single book that we ever talk about is like setting and it's because it's that important, right? Setting
Mhm.
expectations for your reader so that the right reader finds your book and says, "Oh yeah, that's for me." And then you deliver on the thing that they said, "Oh, that's for me." It's really, really important because and I think we talked about this on a previous book, but that's the like the simple difference of expecting one thing and getting another. Like if the reader had known what to expect, there's a like there are books where they might have actually liked the book if they hadn't felt like they got something different than what they were promised, right? But that experience of I came expecting something, one thing, and then I got something else, and then you just sort of feel like, what is it? Like, what just happened? Versus this is a story that I was interested in and it's the story I got. Like that can be the difference between a 1 star and a 5 star, right? Simply
Perfectly.
because what they were expecting is not what they got. So it instantly feels disorienting. Like if they feel somewhat antagonized because they're like, this isn't what I thought I was getting. And so it shifts it into sort of a negative experience. And that's why setting those expectations and those promises with your stories, both between the way that you open the story and the way that you market the story and the blurb and the cover and all the ways that you communicate what your story is like super super important because you want the right reader to find your book, the person who's going to like what you wrote. You want them to be able to find it and know that it's for them.
Yes, and I would also say, especially here, like you don't write 6 books for people to read too, right? Like you write 6 books, this couple across 6 books because you want people to get the whole journey. You want them to be able to experience the story as you saw it in your head and as you wrote it.
Mm,
And the way that you do that is how you set up for them, to have that experience in attracting the right people. And part of that is in how you classify it. And
yeah.
so I would say with that, I talked about the brand promise. And so that kind of goes here, what you kind of talked about, which was, sort of like what are those considerations? And I sort of have named some, which is, deciding whether saying series and serial are two different things. And now I think sometimes because of the way we are sort of set up by our buying experience, especially the electronic buying experience, we sort of have attached words to that, like there's a series of books, right? And
Hmm.
all 4 of them or 5 of them are kind of put together so that you can have a unified buying experience, right?
Hmm.
But when you're talking about the mechanics on the story side, there
Yeah.
is usually something that is a connecting factor that makes it become a series, and that can
Hmm.
be something as loose as location or something
Yeah.
in this case as in depth as there is a unified story arc from beginning to
Hmm.
end, and it's not just a romantic couple because it's the romantic couple and it's the external journey.
Hmm.
If you were doing something like a serial, it would be more like if you think of episodic television,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of times when you see it in books, you will see this a lot in cozies. You will
Hmm.
see this a lot in some of those thriller series or the suspense series where you have a single protagonist that's doing. I'm thinking of Reacher and
Yeah, yeah, for
th-
sure.
right.
They're
That's
individual adventures that happen in the same world, Usually they follow the same protagonist,
Mm-hmm.
but they're self-contained, even
Mm-hmm.
if there are elements that might build over the course of a series, like a growing
Exactly.
relationship as a minor subplot, or minor changes in characters who like secondary characters who grow or move or become like more significant characters or whatever. So there's like minor changes across a serial. And I think that, to just add in there, the pros of that means that you can kind of, because it's a standalone, it's like self-contained, you can follow the class, like you can escalate that story all the way to the maximum stakes for that story, and then like do it again for the next book, because we're in a new adventure, we're in a new, right? So it's like you can, because it's self-contained, you don't have to think about like, oh, where's book 6 going to be. It escalates like a standalone book would, and there are these isolated episodes, these isolated adventures, versus in a series you have to be like, okay, this is what like book 3 is going to end here, so that means that book 2 has to fall here, and book 1, right? You have to be more cognizant of how you're arcing that series.
If you're doing a series that has a connect is interconnected, if you are.
Yes, that sorry,
Right.
that follows like a series that follows a linear progression
That's right.
that is a single plot.
Right. And so let's give some examples real quick. So of the books that we've read books that are series, right? I'm thinking of Ninth House, right? When we pick up whenever, if you pick up book 2, you're going to pick
Mhm.
up with her continuing her adventure to find, listen, don't give me the line, oh boy. Another one that we oh boy, I mean almost all the ones that we did, one for the money, one for the money. Now that's
It's a
almost a
serial
different,
style.
it's serial style, exactly.
Yeah.
Now if you think about I would do two more examples of one of each. Then Before I Let Go is a series, and if
Hmm.
we do Sookie Stackhouse, Dead Until Dark, that is
Yep.
serial style. So
Yep.
so
Serial
you want
style.
to know, like what you're dealing with, because that affects what you would do in a book like what we have here, a book 2.
Hmm.
And what you usually will find, now there's different ways that it can do it. It can almost be like a linear sort of progression of time, the way like Before I Let Go. Book 1, her and her husband, they're back together happily ever after, and then we pick up with the next couple. Or in
Hmm.
this case, because we do have one couple, it's almost as if we start off in a nice tight center, and every book is sort of opening
Yeah.
up their world while progressively raising the stakes of the overarching arc. But each one of the books, which she's done a great job of so far, is its own story, but it is
Hmm.
moving that plot forward.
Yeah. So then I think this is a good opportunity to kind of like shift into the question of, so if you are going to stretch out a romance over multiple books, right? You do have a single plot and sort of like single couple that you're following through multiple books. What are some of the things that you need to keep in mind? Like whether it's a trilogy or it's 6 books, like what do you have to be able to do? What do you need to have in order to pull that off?
Well, first of all, we cannot talk about everything because it's everything. But I would say at a minimum, I would want you to have several romances under your belt that are
Hmm.
individual, standalone, because the reality is the structure is similar. But to take that structure that you may write for 50,000 words, and now you're taking it and you're ballooning it to 300,000, that's just a whole
Hmm.
nother beast. And it's not just
Yeah.
throwing more sex scenes or whatever. I don't know what you would say,
Yeah.
right? You want to be able to hook people and hold people. Again, you write 6 books because you want them to read all 6, right? In this case.
Hmm.
So I would say you want to have several books under your belt. You also want to look at, like, once you decide on, and I'm just going to use this one as an example since there's so many
Yeah.
different ways you can do a series. But in this case, you will want to look at, like, how does that external threat progress over the course of the series? And in this case,
Hmm.
how it progresses over the 6 books. You also want to look at how the individual, your individual protagonists, because we have 2 protagonists, how those stakes are for them individually and how they progress across each book. And then
Mm-hmm.
also for that romance, how does that romance, because that's the one thing that I would say would probably be the tightest through line, where it's them going from, in this case, bumping to each other literally out
Mm-hmm.
shopping, to book six being a happily ever after, right? It's like how you're moving them through and how that push pull and how, they're evolving and what do they learn about each other and how do we see them show up for each other and how do we see them fight and how do we see them have conflict, and to end at a place where we believe they will walk off into the sunset together, because that
Yeah.
is what the happily ever after is. And in this case, because it's one couple, you're ending it with a happy for now. And I would say every one of those happy for nows should kind of like put a pin in it. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so we see in book one that that pin in it was that, you know, yeah, so we're attracted to each other. Um, but nothing can come of this,
Mm-hmm.
but I will work for you to help you do this thing. I will agree
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And I agree to pay you to be able to help me to do this. And that's the one thing we do agree on, even though
Mm-hmm.
silently, internally, they are connected, whether they want
Yeah.
to admit it or not. And so you have
Mm-hmm.
one of those sort of equivalent moments that you are unfolding every single book so that you're pulling people forward. And I would say the final thing, I mean, because there's many other things.
Sure.
I would say two other things, and then I want to say this other. The other thing I would say is you want to make it so that them saying yes, and as they continue, that it makes it harder, right? Because
Yeah.
usually the romance is not this. Look, they do not have love on the menu. That's what I have in my notes, right? Like love is not on the menu. So them choosing it is at the worst time possible,
Yeah.
but there's something about this relationship that they need to become the
Yeah.
person that they need to be to do
Mm-hmm.
what they've come here to do.
Yeah.
And that is important. And we're
Yeah.
seeing them sort of like address that, fight that, struggle with it,
Mm-hmm.
stand up for it, fight for it, love for it, until we get
Yeah.
to the end. Um, And as we move forward, you'll see more and more how the status quo that we saw in book one here, or
Mm-hmm.
that you would normally see in an act one, there's no going back to that ever.
Yeah.
Right? They can live in that house, but it will never be right like what happened before. And so
Yeah.
understanding what that is and what they're giving up and what they're gaining.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like when we said in our summary, like it made the worst best decision ever, right? It's the
Yeah.
worst decision to be tied up in a demigod's war, but it's the
Yeah.
best decision because she's found her person and he's found his person, whether they
Mm-hmm.
fully are in a position to acknowledge it or not, and to feel free to acknowledge that or not.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that I would say is the beginning places to be able to do something like this, whether you're doing
Yeah.
it at the trilogy level or in this case 6 books.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that really gets at, again, we're really, this book is really a steamy slow burn, right? Like this
Yes.
is, we are tracking one relationship and pulling that all the way through 6 books. And
Hmm.
that development. And so, but it's steamy on the page. And we get those promises, right? Like it's very clear, even in the first book, that there is going to be steamy on the page. And then like, right. And so you see that like sets up that promise and then sets up that promise again, right? In the second book, where it's like setting up that this is a steamy romance, and delivering on that, and then like presumably continuing to carry that through the remainder of the series.
Yes, and I would say here, well, when we say a steamy, slow burn, it was like it's the steamy is that it's explicit and it's on the page, and the
Mm-hmm.
slow burn is that they are not quite when we get to the end of book one, they're not agreeing to be a couple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even when we get to book two, they're dancing around this thing. Why? Because we have six
Mm-hmm.
books for them to be in agreement. I would say if I
Yeah.
had to bet, knowing structure, they are probably locked and loaded by the midpoint, by the end of three, and we see the highs and lows, and then that they're fully locked in probably by the last two,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
and now they're just addressing the external world through their love is um what I would that would be my guess. And so
Yeah.
yes, that's what makes it sort of like, so the slow burn is that you're seeing now what she does beautifully is while we're in that slow burn, we are still experiencing the progression of their intimate relationship, because this is
Yeah.
still building a relationship, but they just
Mm-hmm.
haven't agreed that this is where I want
Yes.
to be for the obvious reasons in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you had a couple more points I want to make sure that we like have a chance to just sort of touch on of like creating that depth through the relationships, and how the like how their relationships and our understanding of them, and actually these two things go together because you kind of talked about one as an avenue for the other, develops right through action. So we see who they are through what they do, sort of using the secondary cast as a way to do that. And again, it's a great way to really build out the world and build out the story and build out the characters in an active way, right? So that the story is moving forward and developing, and it's not. And you talk about this in one of the later episodes where it's like we're constantly looking back of like, here's how we got here, here's how we got here, but it's the story pushes forward and really allows us to understand the characters through what they choose and through how they interact with each other and the dynamics of their relationships. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I would say yes. What I see here in Sin and Magic is that's how KF Breene chose to handle the slow burn in book two.
Hmm.
In that
Yeah.
I see book two as being that we get to get an understanding of who they are through their most intimate and significant relationships.
Yeah.
We see the good and the bad, right? For
Hmm.
Kieran, we see his relationship with his mom and what he's willing to do for his
Hmm.
mom, and his relationship with his dad and what he's willing to endure and go through with his dad, and his relationship with his six, and
Hmm.
even vice versa, what they're willing to do for him. And we see for Lexi that she pretty much has been hiding, but what she'll do for Mordecai and what she'll do for Daisy. And I
Hmm.
sort of express that this book too to me feels like the greatest sort of rendition of showing versus telling, because we are seeing
Yeah.
who they are through their actions, and it's through the lens
Yeah.
of how they care for others. And we even see it
Hmm.
in how they look out for and care for each other, even when they are saying with their words,
Hmm.
this is not going to work.
Yeah.
But they keep
Yeah.
being in each other's orbit, and they keep
Yeah.
finding themselves back to each other. And that's showing the progression of the relationship, and how they always
Yeah.
sort of lock back in is showing how
Hmm.
that relationship is moving forward, and how it's like we continue to see what risk comes with that, and
Hmm.
as you asked before, the potential for reward, right? The potential
Yeah.
for reward kind of feels like a Burberry bag for
Yeah.
Alexis, and a good job, like a good
Yeah.
paying job, and the ability to pay for her kids, and take care of her kids. But the other part of it is what we love in romance is being seen, being
Yeah.
heard, being loved for who you are, being sort of
Hmm.
championed for who you are. And we're starting to see that not just through Carrion, but also through his six, and through how they
Hmm.
see the kids and see her raising of them, and see that as a reflection of who she is and
Yeah.
how she protects and loves them. So we begin to see more and develop those two characters
Hmm.
through their relationships while the external plot is moving forward, and we're looking for his mother's spirit. And
Yeah.
she is on the magical side or the paranormal side, which is learning more about her powers, what she can do, the things that she knew and didn't know, and her training to get better at it, and
Yeah.
also training to potentially be a part of the ultimate mission that Kieran has, even though he doesn't want her anywhere near it, right? And so that's what we see in book two. But here, I would say for this series, that this book two gives us depth,
Yeah.
relational depth.
Hmm. Yeah, and again, that depth is I think this is we'll talk about this in takeaways. The episodes all start to blur together after 10 hours, but it's the relational depth, like that's where like you get the stakes going sort of like deep, right? So again, the relationships and the people become real to us. Those characters
Mm-hmm.
become real to us, and so the potential for harm to them matters to us, right? So
Yes.
the same way that it matters for Lexi, it comes to matter to us because we get to experience them in real time and see the dynamic, and then see that, oh, these are people that we also like who are now at risk because of what's happening. And I think that that's a really great strategy for a book to, again, in a series that's going to be building out over this amount of space. You're going to want that anyway. It's just a matter of sort of where and how it happens based on the length of your series, right? So if we're in a trilogy, we need to start establish, like we need to move a little bit more quickly with more condensation, so to speak, like more condensing. Because we're not going to stretch it out over 6 books. So we have to do a little more multitasking. But
Mm.
with the trajectory that she has for the book, because you still want those characters and that meaning in the story, but because she has this much time, she's taking advantage of it to deepen those stakes and deepen our commitment to the characters, so that as the stakes do escalate externally, we feel that importance because there are people that we don't want to see harmed in the story, if that makes
We're
sense.
invested, yes.
Yeah.
And I would also say, I mean, it makes me think about one of the notes that you had earlier, which is like essentially like what are the pros and cons or the risk and rewards. And I think the biggest one is realizing that in order to pull this off, you have to have people we want to spend that much time with.
Yes.
And the stakes and what they're up against and the journey that they're on is significant enough that we feel
Yeah.
invested.
Mm-hmm.
And that we don't just read one book, that we read six, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, that having more time under your belt and understand like like what are the elements for you to make a character that feels like you are invested for 300,000 words, not just
Yeah.
to write but for someone to read, because at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
though, that is what each book is probably what 12 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember
I
how
think
many
this one
hours.
was like 11.
Okay, so 11 hours,
Yeah.
11 hours times 6 books, that's almost 70 hours of
Yes.
time that you're spending in this world. And this is where one of the things you touched on, why having the secondary characters and the size cast that they have, expanding out so that we're getting more and more into the world and understand how the magical world works, not just in San
Yeah.
Francisco, but in the world at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things make so that the sense of making the world bigger isn't just for the sake of having something to do. It's to be
Yeah.
able to sort of pull that lens out and show
Mm-hmm.
how this journey that they're on just doesn't just affect Kieran's mom, as an
Mm-hmm.
example. It
Yeah.
affects others. And because you are concerned about that, you're concerned. You know what I mean? So that's the other part about this. Like, you want people that people are going to want to cheer for, and then we're going to want to just sit in and get lost in, and that we want to continue to have that journey across 5 more books.
Yeah, and it's similar actually, sort of weirdly, to like Knock 'em Out, right? If you are going to have, now Knock 'em Out is a series, but it follows different couples, just to be clear.
Right.
So it does differ in that way. But if you are going to have this much, and this is sort of like generally sort of rom-com, like contemporary romance sort of territory, I guess more rom-com than contemporary. I'm not sure how
I would say
hard those
rom-com.
delineations are.
Mhm.
Okay, rom-com. If we are going to spend 500 pages in a rom-com, we need to really want to be in, if not just if we're going to spend 500 pages in a rom-com, but if we're going to do it 2 times more after this, like
Exactly.
once, and then we're going to spend 2 more 500-page books in a rom-com, we have to really want to be there. That's it's a similar thing of like, if we are going to spend 6 books in this world with these characters, we really need to like want to we're the literally like your reader won't continue reading if they don't want to spend 6 books with these characters. And so that becomes with these characters and in this world, and again have enough curiosity about the story, right, to want to keep going. And I think that she does such a really nice job of again developing one piece at a time of this overarching story of Valens. And like we know that Valens exists, right? Book one, we know that he's not great. We know that much. And then in book two, we're like, ooh, oh no, he's really like he's up to something. He's up to something not good. And they're just at the cusp. Lexi, at least, is just at the cusp of kind of getting involved with whatever it is. And then we're gonna see more of that in book three. And right, it's gonna keep building. And she does a really great job of with every book building up that storyline of what's happening with Valens and the overarching effort to again I'm assuming overthrow him is all the vibes I'm getting, but I haven't read the whole series, so I don't exactly know where it's heading. And those are all the things that again if you're gonna do, whether it's a trilogy, whether it's even a serial style, right, or a longer running like series with a single through line, or a series with multiple couples in the same town, like it does require, right, the best way to sell your second book is to make your first one great, right? Your first book is your best way to sell your second book, or however you say. You have a really clever way of saying it. It's fabulous. And
But it works both ways.
But right, no matter what that is, no matter what style you're kind of going for, if you're going to set a book in any kind of series style, whether it's serial or otherwise, that is the task to give the reader characters that they and a world that they want to keep spending time in and that they will keep showing up for. And again, that just goes double when you're going to do it over 6 books, which is just will continue to be bonkers to me, because point being is that this is not especially common. It's doubly not common in romance. So this is really, I find this series a fascinating look at, whoa, you went for 6 books, like how did you do it? What are you putting in the books? And so watching it unfold is really, really interesting, just from like a writer and an editor perspective.
Well, I'll be keeping you posted because I'm almost done with book 3 and I'll be starting book 4. And so I will definitely keep you posted. I think we've covered everything that we had on our notes for the overview. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we close out this episode?
Nope, I hit all of my bullet points, all 5 of them.
You did. I got them. I would say in closing, know that just like our other books, this is not an exhaustive conversation. This is our first book too. And I think we both agree she does a great job. I think we do have different like lenses on what we thought were strong parts and which ones we thought could have been shored up. But overall, like we're in agreement that this book really works. And I think it's a fantastic demonstration of how to have a book too, whether you have 4 more after or you just have 1 more after. I think if it would have been 1 more after, it would have been probably a little bit stronger, but whatever.
Yeah.
And over the next 3 episodes, you're going to follow along with us as we talk about the plot, the characters, and ultimately our high editor's takeaway. And so stick around. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and grab the book, read the book. Of course, it's in audio. We try our best to have it in audio for you to be able to get to that. And I'm sure you can find this one in the library. I mean, this is a very, very popular book.
Yeah, I think you might. I'm just going to make a quick insertion just because the audiobooks are Audible exclusive. So that's just something to know for the audio, but I'm pretty sure you can get the at least like the ebook through your library. But that's one thing that I notice about this particular series is that it's Audible exclusive.
Okay. Well, now we know. So with that said, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you follow us. You can follow us at storydeepdive.com. Look, storydeepdive.com. Thumbs up, heart, leave a review, and definitely let us know if you have any questions. We like to look for those when we get ready to do any of our bonus episodes. We will see you next week where we'll talk about the plot in Sin and Magic by K.F. Breene. Thank you for joining us. Take care. And as always, happy writing. Goodbye.